Like, I don't know how we do it anymore.
Hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Gabe.
And we're
The Ghouls Next Door. Talking about
You know.
spooky stuff.
Yeah, you know how we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing it.
We're being very specific about the spooky stuff recently.
Yeah. We're like, this.
Yeah.
And then we drop it and we're like, let's talk about
this. Yeah. What we're doing primarily, sorry, I'm like fixing my hair while I do this.
Dare you? You need to come to set
Prepared. Yeah, it's super true.
I almost said ready, so like it's cool that we both said prepared to be in sync.
It's good. We are in a new lair. As you can tell, it doesn't look like our spooky basement anymore. Yeah. So things are different.
It's a spooky above ground.
Yes.
But like twice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we have been, in recent episodes, been focusing primarily on social horror.
Mm-hmm. So like slightly similar.
Yeah.
To our horrors of society.
Yes.
But
yeah,
right now, you know, we're talking specifically about like one film instead of more than one film.
Yeah. What I think is like what we keep coming into when we have been like exploring these films like over this time is that there's all the articles and stuff are reaffirming what we've been saying for like since the beginning of time with our podcast, which is that horror tells these stories and like, you know, amplifies the horrors that we're facing, right? It is used as an outlet to be like, this is really messed up. People are suffering. The world is suffering, X, Y, and Z. And so we use this horror film to kind of showcase one or so issues, etc. And so horror's always done that. Like we, you know, Frankenstein. You know,
we've been saying that like for a minute. And it's funny because it's like, I feel like I was slightly worried and you were slightly worried about us like running out of stuff to talk about. And it's like, nah, I mean, like we're just going to keep saying the same stuff, but about a different thing so that it just keeps reaffirming the fact that, hey, remember that thing we said? This is the thing the whole time. It keeps going and it continues to be the thing. The more times you see it, maybe the more it'll start to like solidify in people's brains.
Yeah.
So that they understand it instead, or it'll have the opposite effect where it's like, I don't know the fix it, so
yeah,
it's not there. It's movie time only.
Yeah. But, well, I think we're getting a little better. We're seeing things, and I think because of the political climate today, people are more susceptible to be willing to learn and understand and appreciate that media that is trying to teach you something. And so we're seeing now like people kind of flocking to things like Watchmen or being excited about something like Lovecraft Country because they are ready. Right? So like it's finally the time for social horror.
All the people were like, it's not the time. It's the time now.
Yeah. It's always been the time.
Yeah.
But like now it's the time and people like you know,
well,
and so
some.
Yeah. Yes.
Not everybody. We can't get everybody.
But people like it. And today we're going to be talking about a social horror that I was honestly very excited about when I saw the trailer. I was like, that is so sick.
Yeah, we were hyped to see. I feel like we were going to see it in person if that presented itself as an option. But then life.
Yes.
And no.
So. Yeah, exactly. And so we did not see this in person. We saw it very recently now. And it was long awaited. And maybe that's why it was kind of disappointing because we wanted it so bad. We had our hopes up.
See, it had me the first half. And the second half was just a hard turn no. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like also the way we've been viewing, like, I don't know, I just feel like things recently have just like helped us really solidify how we feel about a lot.
Yeah.
So I think our stance against certain things is firmer.
Yeah.
we've had a lot of time to just like really drench ourselves in it, I guess. Yeah. And just like in ways more than just the media that we're watching, like in educating ourselves, and it's everything is everywhere all the time because we don't have it most of the time, don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So you can't escape it. It's just all the time. Yeah. So I feel like that maybe helps us hone in on it.
I also think it's being more comfortable because it's a little more acceptable to be angry and to be vocal about it. Like, I mean, people have always been angry. We've definitely been angry, and we've definitely used this as a platform to kind of talk about things. Yeah. But we've also kind of held back a little because, again, it wasn't the time or wasn't really an environment in which you could be that vocal or that excited and angry about those things, like in critiques, right? And there was like an article talking about this film, which is what we're going to be talking about, which is The Invisible Man, where, you know, it said that this film couldn't exist in the degree that it is now before the Me Too movement. And like totally true, because one, this man who directed it wouldn't have known that so many of the women around him were affected by abuse of some sort, right? Like the world was kind of blind to that that reality that so many women face, and that we all have a story, like we all have a Me Too, right? Yeah. And so it took a movement like that to then fuel a film like this, and it just is sad because of the point of view that it is from, or, you know, that I think that's kind of where it loses some of its magic. But I agree that I don't think it could have existed without the Me Too movement, which is started by women. Same was Black Lives Matter, started by women, like out here trying to, you know, change things. Women of color, specifically Black women. So, so we're going to talk about The Invisible Man. And I think it is similar to Get Out in that it is very apparent what it's trying to tell you. Yeah. It's not kind of like, it's very like in your face.
It's not like you should watch a hour-long YouTube video after you've seen it to unpack every little tiny detail that meant this secretly, metaphorically.
Yeah.
It's more like, hey, that's happening.
Yeah.
Look at it, be upset.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Get Out is there's so much to unpack too.
Oh, it's both.
But it was so much so like you knew, like it's really hard to argue that Get Out is not a film about race. Like there's no way to argue that it's not that, right? And the same thing with Invisible Man. It's really like you cannot argue that this is not a film about toxic relationships and abusive relationships, right? Domestic violence. It is very clearly that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like that in that, well, like with the first Purge, right? You can't argue that that's not about how America has, you know, used and abused minorities and BIPOC.
Yeah. There's no way. You would win. You would lose that argument. It's like that guy in the park. He's like, convince me otherwise.
Oh, that,
but you definitely could.
Changed my mind.
Okay, you know what I'm saying. You know,
convince me otherwise. It's like the fancy one. Convince me of an ulterior.
Guys, all I'm saying is,
okay,
I've been out of the practice of the saying words to other humans.
Yeah.
And
it is apparent.
You can tell now.
Yeah.
You said it. You know,
that's good.
Thanks, Gabe.
You're welcome.
Friends.
I got you. That was great.
You're welcome.
That's what you come to Ghouls for, is these gems like these.
Yeah.
So this film, like I said, it's very in your face about domestic abuse. And with that, like, I think that's one of the more powerful parts about it, right? Like it does, you know, very clearly tell you the story that it's going to tell you. And like drives those themes home, right? I just think it kind of falls flat in the third act, which we'll talk about. And there's also a parallel with a similar and themed, but our favorite horror film, which is It Follows, does this much better. Even though the thing with It Follows is that most people who watch it don't really see it for that.
Like they don't realize that that's
in your face. Yeah. So I would say in this case, Invisible Man really does, you know, tell you exactly what you're going to get.
Mhm.
Whereas like It Follows, you do have to like dig for it. You
Yeah.
have to be paying attention a little more. So
Yeah.
for that, I would say, it gets a win in that column. But
Yeah.
if you do not know what Invisible Man is about, it is from 2020. Yeah,
Oh yeah, wow.
Oof. What a year. It's been a long year.
2020?
It's been a long year. It's fine.
It's
We're
still
gonna be
so
fine.
early.
Yeah. Okay, here's what it's about. After staging his own suicide, a crazed scientist uses his power to become invisible to stalk and terrorize his ex-girlfriend. When the police refuse to believe her story, she decides to take matters into her own hands and fight back. I don't know about that.
I feel like that wasn't what happened.
I don't know about that, Wikipedia.
That like wasn't what happened.
I mean, she did eventually, but it really was like, I don't know if it was so much a decision as like I'm gonna die if I don't kind of thing. Like it's not really a decision. That's more of a reaction.
Yeah. Like there was no other choice.
Well, this film is directed by Lee Wantel. Let me double check that last name. Oh, I minimized my window. It's been a long time. Winnell. Lee Wannell. Winnell. Bloomhouse, of course. You could have let a woman have this one, Bloomhouse. You could have let a woman have just this one about a woman. No, okay, it's fine. It's fine, Jason. It's fine.
Remember what he said though?
Said women don't want to. He would love for women to direct horror, but there's none out there. They're not out there. That's my impression of what that white man would sound like. Check your inbox, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, gotta do my sorry to bother you. Sorry to bother you, but women don't want to direct horror films. Yeah, they do. And they could have did a better job with this. This is starring Elizabeth Moss.
Mhm.
And we've discussed her before. She does a great job. I always am under the impression that she uses the films that she stars in as her way to kind of explain that she's not really a Scientologist, but that's just me dreaming that she's better than Scientology.
Did she not say, like, have you seen the films I make? Like, okay, she has
it is like but I mean, I also feel like I'm really reading into it because I'm hoping and praying that that's the case, because it's really hard to disconnect from your family.
Yeah. You'd
lose everyone you know and love. Scientology is a cult, so and it does not care about women. So her, continuous starring roles in films and TV in which women are being oppressed and they're fighting back, and you're this heroine who's trying to make something, right? I think is her way of being like,
yeah,
and but I don't believe that.
She's always very human in her, like she's definitely always very flawed in her role, like in that, like she's very human dealing with this reality that she is trapped in, and like reacts very humanly to it. Where in that, like, she's not doing anything like superhuman or crazy. Like she has her selfish moments, she has her like flawed moments. She is very convincing in her acting, and I think that like says something about potentially what the meaning of the things can be.
And I think what's interesting about her is that she has such a unique like appearance too. Like she's really pretty, even just like dressed down, like in like she plays other roles where it's like I'm not this beautified like super makeup, but she's still beautiful. Right? Like you still buy into like her being someone who would, get this kind of attention. One of the things that I think about when I think about this film is like, and then the decision to have Elizabeth Moss, who Lee actually like consulted with her and went over the script and like wanted to be sure that a woman's voice had some weight in it, which she admitted doesn't happen very often, unfortunately, in the film industry. And so having a woman as the lead, right? Having the victim as a lead, because in the original Invisible Man, we're going through him and he's kind of the victim. And so that decision just kind of comes hand in hand with the idea of domestic violence and abusive relationships, because it does tend to be women who are the ones suffering and are the victims, like in like a majority of the cases. Not all of them.
There are no universals.
Absolutely not. but it does make me think of the Donald Glover quote from when he had a stand-up, and he had said, "Why don't women have crazy men stories? I don't really hear them." And then I realized it's because if you have a crazy boyfriend, you're going to die. Because it's like men, they got crazy girlfriends. And at some point, you got to ask yourself, if all your girlfriends happen to be crazy, maybe it's just you. Maybe it's you, but
it's probably you.
It's probably you. But yeah, it's this idea that if you have a crazy boyfriend, there's a lot of fear, and it's something that came with the Me Too movement was this acknowledgement that there's a certain expectation that men have, or power and control that is ingrained in masculinity and misogyny that they are also victims of. And so it like they need that power, they need that control, and so that does happen to usually end in like them being the abuser, right? But that's not, again, not to say there is any universals, because there are plenty of men who've been harmed because of abusive relationships. There's even I just saw an article about a K-pop star in the 90s who was murdered mysteriously, and people rumor that it was his girlfriend of the time.
Yeah, and I mean, abuse is not limited to just physical violence. There's emotional abuse. There is many others that I learned about in my trauma class that I had the names of 4 that no longer live in my brain.
Emotional, psychological, yes. And I think that's what I think this film does do well, is that abuse isn't cut and dry, right? It's not just you get like and the problem that people have with this idea of like, why don't you just leave? Right. And it's because that's not really what it is. It's not what we see. Like, it's not you meet this person, you go on one date, and then all of a sudden they're hitting you. Like, that's not how that works, right? It's control, and that's what the abuse is. It's and she even says it in the film. She says he controlled what I wore and who I talked to and what I ate and when I went to sleep. Like, that's what they do. It's this, they start controlling all these little pieces of your life, and the abuse does not, like, physical abuse usually doesn't come till quite later, until you're in too deep and you have lost your independence and who you were, and you've been alienated from everyone around you. And so you kind of have nothing else. And so you try to make this work. And it's similar to the cult mentality of like, if you've reasoned with if you made this premise logical for years, like 5 years, right? And then on the 5th year of this cult, they're like, we have to kill ourselves for Jesus. At that point, like, you think like, okay, you would leave, but you wouldn't, because you would have to confront that you have been wrong for 5 years. Like, you would have to relearn and re-understand everything that you've taught yourself. Like, the reality that you just warped and made your own. And so that's exactly what abusive relationships are. Like, you totally have it twisted. It's not black and white of like, I just leave now. Like, your whole life is this person. They made it that way. They made you alone, so you can't go anywhere else. And there is this like control, and you feel it's your responsibility to do it. Another thing about abusers is that they generally are very charming. They are the light of the party, right? Like, people see them and people want them. They're desirable. They're very romantic, and they woo you and sweep you off your feet.
Big gestures and stuff.
Yes. And they're also like they have this air of vulnerability as well, like, where with just you, right? Like, making you special. Like, I cry because I can be weak with you, and like, you give me the space to do that. So then you feel responsibility as that person's crutch, right? Like, you're like, I'm the only one that they can be real with, so I owe it to them to give them this opportunity. And so they are like that, and it's, open, and you feel like you're special. And it's very similar to, the idea of the frog in the slowly boiling water. You are in there, you don't know that you're being cooked. But you are, until it's too late, until the physical abuse happens. And then it's like, I'm already in this. And he said it was just that one time. And it's just because he's angry. If I don't make him angry, it's not going to happen again. And these things like pile up, and you do end up stuck in those things. And so for people who are always like, why don't you leave? It really is not that simple. And I can speak from that because I've been in several toxic relationships. 3 were incredibly harmful to me mentally and emotionally, and things that I still have to unlearn. Like there are times when I'm like, I have a reaction to basic anger. Like people are allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be angry, right? But if someone's just like grumpy about something, I immediately feel like I'm attacked.
Yeah.
Because that was the way that I had been trained. It was that I was already on the offense of like, no, like it's not me, I didn't do it. Like I'm like offended by anger because of those things. And so it's really how your brain gets rewired. And so especially when you end up being, you know, in replicate like situations too, because that's what you believe you're worthy of too, but like not so like in your face, like I'm worthy of trash, whatever. It's something subconscious. You don't even notice it's happening, and then you're in it, and you're like again, like, and it really takes like being out of it and escaping it to kind of look back and be like, oh well, there's all the red flags. Could have paid attention to that one, or just like, you know, realizing like, oh, I see how manipulative it was and how it affected me and changed the way that I perceived danger and perceive myself too. And so I think this film does, in the first act, does a really good job of showing, like, it's this fantastical premise that turns out it could be real. The fantastical premise of he's invisible and he's tormenting her. But when you translate that to like, what does this mean, media analysis, it's that, you know, you were always haunted and the abuse doesn't really go away. You have PTSD, you have this residual pain that you now have to live with. Like you were always looking over your shoulder. And it's very real that that person could very much be watching you from your webcam or like around the corner. Like women who get to finally leave one of these relationships often end up dead. Because they are found. Like you're not allowed to leave them. Like it's too late. Like and so there's a real level to that where you feel like you're being watched.
Yeah. And I feel like also the invisibleness of him kind of like, for me, it was like the abuse was blatantly happening to her, but no one else could see it. It all looked like she was like doing it to herself. That it was her fault. Yeah. That she was the one making all of it happen. And like, I feel like in a society that is putting men up on this pedestal, or like abusers up, honestly, on a pedestal of, well, that didn't happen when I went on a date with them. Or like, I never even kind of saw them be that way. It's like, just because your experience is one way with somebody does not mean that that is how they act with other human beings. Yeah. And then, it's just like him being invisible and it all falling on her kind of just made me feel that way.
Yeah. And because I think a big theme with it is gaslighting, right? Like she even says it, that she says, he always does this. He makes me out to be the crazy one. And that's one of the main tactics of abuse is that, you know, you confront, and that's something that, like, before gaslighting was a term, I experienced that and was like, why this? Like, I cannot imagine, like, I cannot reconcile these two worlds of truth, right? It's like, how could you, like, accuse me of all X, Y, and Z when I know for a fact you're doing X, Y, and Z, and you're just accusing me because you feel guilty, but it twists your world, right? Yeah. And so for people who don't know, gaslighting, do you want to give the definition from Wikipedia? It's in red. It says, Wikipedia says.
Oh. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which a person or a group covertly sow seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or group, making them question their own memory, perception, or judgment, often evoking in them cognitive dissonance and other changes, including low self-esteem.
Yeah. So if your reality, this person is very clearly cheating, and that person says you're crazy, you're being controlling, you're being obsessive, you looking through my phone is an invasion of privacy, not the fact that like you have cause to look through my phone because you don't trust me, right? And so then it gets twisted where you're like, you're right, like, I'm sorry I invaded your privacy. And like, maybe it's because I'm not doing something or, you know, and that's not the case. That's not how cheating works. Yeah. It's not your fault. It's that person's fault. They have things to deal with. So yeah, gaslighting is very strong in here. And like you were saying, there's often times where she says, he's doing this. Yeah. He did this. And they look at her like, And that's, victim blaming 101. It's you let, like, how could you let someone do that to you? Do you not care about yourself enough that you can let them degrade you? And how could you believe them? And how could you stay here? Like, I've had those things thrown at me where I'm just like, me of all people, like, if people know me in real life, that's why I'm like, this is Gabe's using her platform to get too personal. Like, if you know me, I'm a very strong-minded person. And I'm very, like, very in defense of things that I believe in. And
you don't take crap.
Yes. And for someone like me to have experienced those things several times, it's not like a one time where I was like, oops, that's an oopsie guy. It's happened way more than enough times where you're like, it isn't like any, and it takes a lot to kind of look in the mirror and be like, it wasn't my fault that those things happened. Yeah. And that takes a lot of growth. It takes a lot to be like, that is on them, and I am a victim in it, but I am also a survivor in it. And I think that's where the strength comes from, right? Yeah. And that's where I think this film loses it, is that there isn't any strength, because she's not a survivor. She's always a victim until she just
can't be anything but, like, it. And it was very interesting how the man in this specifically literally takes everyone from her. Like, it's not even just like they don't want to talk to you anymore. Oh, we're not friends with, or like he like says stuff so that like you don't want to be friends with those people anymore. He literally murders them. Yeah. Violently and in public. And like, so it was the actual removal of the people, like literally, like taking their lives. It felt like this not how that would happen. Yeah. Because usually I feel it, or I don't know, but I feel like it would be specifically geared towards the person. Mm-hmm. Like that the issue is with them and their person that they're trying to overcome and take control of.
But he did do that in hacking her email and sending that email to her sister, and her sister believed it because there was truth in that. Like, we're all human, and sometimes you're upset with people that you care about. Yeah. And there are things you don't want to say to people, like, and so he did that. Yeah. He actively did that. And then also by targeting her, attacking her, and having her act out and seem unhinged also added to people, like, her being alienated. Like, that's a part of it. Like, she was being alienated before people started dropping. Yeah. And being attacked. Like, and that's why I think the first part of this film does a really good job with it. Yeah. Like, I really felt like I was for it.
Yeah, it was great at the beginning.
It was so great. Like, cinematography wise, phenomenal. Like, right from the beginning, we're in the house and she is gonna leave, right? And so she's doing all these little tasks to get ready to leave. Yeah. And she's creeping and being quiet and lingering and all these things, and she's got stuff stashed and she's got this plan, she's executing it. And even from then, we are the camera observing her from afar. Yeah. And so that's what I thought was super interesting, is that like there's like a scene where she like leaves the room and we're in the hallway and we're stuck in the hallway.
Yeah, just waiting.
And you think, oh, he's going to get up and come in here, and he doesn't. And so I think that kind of similar tension that we're kind of given reminded me of See You Yesterday with the scene with the police officer at the beginning, where you think, oh my gosh, it's going to happen now. So you're put into the position of those characters because you know that's a reality. So you already know it's a reality that he could know what she's doing and that he's evil, whatever. And so when you're put into that position and you see like he's sleeping and then she leaves the room and he's still in there, you're like tense, you're afraid, you're wondering, it's inevitable, it's going to happen, he's coming. Yeah. And so it really kind of draws that out. But all throughout the film, like even after we leave Batman's house, which is what I call him, because he's a man in a suit who is rich white guy who abuses people.
Because he has the power to do it.
Because he can. Because he thinks he's, the hero. Like Batman. And his house also looked like the Bat Lair. So definitely
1 + 2.
Yeah. So when even outside of Batman's house, when we're at the friend's house, there's a whole scene. So there, a lot of the camera angles are very voyeuristic, and you definitely feel like it's purposeful so that you always feel like you're watching instead of being a part of it. Like it totally separates yourself from the traditional filmmaking techniques and that are there to convince you that this thing on film is real. And instead, it's that it's even more real because it continues to exist when we're not there. Right? So like even when the action has left the screen, we're still in that room, right?
Yeah.
Like when she's in the kitchen, she leaves to go answer a question, the thing catches on fire, they were gone. You can hear stuff happening in the background, but we're stuck in the kitchen because we're him. We're watching. And there's times where there's a camera angle and you're just in the closet.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so uncomfortable where we're just far away. It doesn't make, like, cinematically, it wouldn't make any sense to be so far from her when she's having this emotional moment. But of course we are, because we're not a camera right now. We are him.
Yeah, we're like the ones watching her.
So there's lots of scenes where it's very far. It gives this... It's so interesting because it's very dichotomous where we have these very big open spaces. Like Batman's house is very open and there's glass windows and like just space, right? Just space on space. And then there's just her. And even though there's all this open air and there's tall ceilings, all this, we still feel very claustrophobic. You still feel like suffocated in that space because that's what you feel as a person. Like you can be a room full of people and you feel utterly alone, right? And that's like what the cinematography is trying to show. And I thought that was like my favorite part. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's honestly, I feel like the saving grace of it. Like, no one could argue that part was bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just makes you I feel like every time it was a wide, like far away shot, like you knew it was most of the film. You're just like ready to be uncomfortable. You're like, oh no, why? What's about to happen?
Yeah.
What's happening? And it like prepared you to feel tense at the same time.
Yeah.
Very Paranormal Activity.
You felt like her. Yeah. It was very, like, my favorite Paranormal Activity camera technique is from Paranormal Activity 3, and they put the camera on an oscillating fan. They took the fan off, and I was like, and when it was happening, I was in the theaters, and I was like, that's so rude. Don't do that right now. And then it's just like, and you're like, oh, when we come back around here, there's going to be nothing. All right, when we come back around here, oh, there's a sheet. Oh, when we go, the sheet drops. And you're like, oh, I have to wait for it to come back to know what's happening. It's so great.
Yeah.
Like 10 out of 10. That's, I will argue that is the hill I will die on about Paranormal Activity. I think it transforms the found footage landscape. Yeah. This has been a lot of me. Do you want to say anything else? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Well, yeah, I just feel like it really does a good job at like the good parts is that it does a good job at showing like kind of how, or I'd argue maybe it doesn't do a good job of it in that. So when you go through trauma, you're very adaptive to said trauma. It doesn't always hit till afterwards, till you're out of it. As you were saying, like it haunts you because you can't recover from something if it's still actively happening to you. So you're the frog, not realizing all the awful. And it's just really interesting how that just like is so true and plays out in honestly lots of media and just real life. And that like people need to really know that kind of thing. It's like you're not going to notice something's wrong until you have to.
Yeah.
There's no other choice.
Yeah. And I definitely think the first half really does a good job of showing her trauma. And then it gets kind of quirky. So I think the third act of this film really falls short and honestly pulls the rug under from it and makes it not a great film in my... Like, it made me really disappointed and sad because I felt like the plot, that was spoon-fed to the audience in the beginning in a way that was fine. I think it was great. Like, it was a good mesh of the cinematography and the storytelling, and you really identified with her. And then totally, like, goes off the rails and becomes this like action film. It becomes violent. It becomes silly.
Yeah.
And it was no longer scary. It was just kind of like, we're just kind of following the action. We are being let down.
Like kind of detached from it even. You're just kind of like,
yeah.
All right, this is still happening.
Yes. I think it's kind of lost because I think a big part of it is that we can tell the stories of abuse from people who haven't been there, you can tell the story of like being in it and immediately after. But if you haven't been in that situation, you don't really know what the survival and the residual feelings are later. Like you don't know that unless you've experienced it. And so it's hard to kind of convey that or know, be honest and truthful to it if you don't know. And he doesn't, right? And so I just felt like it was disappointing. I didn't feel relief or satisfaction in the end. And like spoilers, you know how it works here. Definitely watch the film. She kills him.
Yeah.
And to me, that was another rape revenge story that horror is, you know, uses as an easy way out. It's very Tyler Perry's Diary of a Mad Black Woman, which still haunts me. That's a horror film. I'll tell you that. No, it's not supposed to be, but it is horrifying. Like there's still parts of that film that emotionally, as someone who has empathy, really, I can't. It's a nightmare. But I think that this trope is super tired and it doesn't bring any joy. And it kind of insults the first half of this film. Yeah. Because if this film's idea is to empower women or folks who have suffered from relationship abuse and a controlling, gaslighting partner, I think it fails them by wielding this premise of pain and acting out a fantasy that many, if not most, will never do.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, you have to confront this idea of like how many women are incarcerated from doing that. Like how many women have finally acted out on abuse and are now in prison. And I'll tell you that as many as 90% of the women in jail today for killing men had been battered by those men. And this is from an article in Boston Globe from 1992, right? So this is like, that's like a real thing. And if you look at statistics today, if you just kind of, you look at that, right? One, this is why I'm on the prison abolition train anyway, but that ending is unsatisfactory because it's really unrealistic. Like I know we're talking about a film.
I was like,
yeah, where a guy is like invisible. Yeah, whatever. I get that. But also the technology is there. But it's not real. That's not how you cope. That's not how you deal with that.
Yeah. And what it should have done, honestly, is ended before, spoilers, he killed the sister.
Yeah.
It should have ended before that. Because honestly, her going to her sister, I would have been satisfied with them, her believing her, them working together.
Getting the suit.
Yeah, like getting, like, well, just like getting her footing in a space that, like, didn't feel temporary. It's not like to say that, like, sometimes, I'm sure, you have to handle it yourself. More times than not, unfortunately. But I agree with you. It just like totally took the realness away from it. It took the message away from it. It took her growth entirely out of the equation and made it like cater to people who want to just watch a gunfight and explosions or whatever. There weren't really explosions, I don't think. But like, you know, just like violence or just like, we're going to get revenge. It's going to be fun. Everyone's going to love it.
Yeah. I think a film that's against domestic violence had a lot of violence and that's not good. It's not fun. Yeah. It's not like, it really feels like when I was watching, I was like, I feel like we've switched over the production team and the production value to this whole, like we became a different movie.
Film.
Yeah. And because I also think like, and they try to explain it away with it being the brother, but I feel like those aren't tactics that he would have ever done because he never would have felt like he was losing. And that's the thing. It's like if you want to win, if you want to show a win, you have to use his pain and his tools against him, right? So like using his cockiness and all of that against him would have been smart, but that's not. And it was such a lackluster revenge too. Like it just kind of happened. And like her reaction,
there should have been a brother.
She's like, you heard. You know what you heard, right? Like to the friend or whatever. Like, where is she? All of a sudden, she's just this vixen, like this villainess. Like all of a sudden, she's grown to be this.
Yeah, they didn't do any of the character development. They just actively traumatized her over and over and over again on screen.
Yeah. Until she hurt somebody.
Yeah. It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't realistic. I just feel like it totally took something that already like. the technology does exist,
Yeah.
but it could have been way better if they, one, even just took a different direction when she got dinner with the sister.
Yeah.
That even would have been satisfying. If it wasn't just like,
oh, another crazy woman.
Yeah, crazy woman, murder time, everyone's around her is gonna die. And it's like really lazy, and I was not thrilled.
Yeah.
It cheapened it. It made it not about like survival and strength. It inspired nothing. It was just like, that happened. Cool. I forget the beginning now, so I guess we watched that.
Yeah. Well, and like, I think it also threw up these like plot devices and then totally like dropped them.
Mm-hmm.
And then like with her pregnancy, right? It's like, it's very clear that he has been raping her. Like that's how, like what happens in that. And that he very clearly had done so when she, like it's happening off screen, but it's to be inferred that he's doing abuse to her, right?
Yeah.
And for him to just like want, like I was like, what kind of like royalty fanfic are we watching right now that his whole purpose is to have an heir? Like I was like, what is this? Like, what is the prince of a nation that he needs an heir? Like that's disgusting.
Also, if anything, that motivates you to leave harder so that they don't have to be around them.
And like you can't use. Yeah, I think her bringing that, like, we never even talked about, like, is she going to keep it? There was never a discussion of, like the pain of being pregnant with
also, they
someone
know
who
she's
raped you.
Yeah, and they know she's pregnant and actively, like, drugging her and, like, being, like, physically very forceful with her, knowing she is pregnant. It cheapened it. It made it not great. It just basically made it a bad time.
Yeah. And, yeah, they just didn't pay, like they would pay respect to one type of abuse and then totally neglect another one, and you can't use the Me Too movement and then totally neglect sexual abuse. That happens.
Well, it sounds like someone who has not experienced. Well, I mean, we don't know their life, but if they have not experienced it, or it's not their lens or space to speak on it, then...
There was like an article where it said Lee had like interviewed a bunch of women in his life to kind of get this idea, and to me, it really felt like a film made by someone who finally heard about the trauma of women, like all of a sudden are aware of it, and we're like, let's make a movie about it. And like they can. That person can, because he's a white man and Blumhouse will just give him whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like women have been telling these stories and have had these feelings and have gone through these things and could probably tell this story more concisely and more, effectively, but we don't give them that platform because it took until now for a film like The Invisible Man to even be considered good enough for screen.
Yeah.
Right? Like, people just didn't think this was a story anyone wanted to hear.
And they had to add gunfights and bloody guts flying everywhere and all of that to make it palatable to an audience that it's not for.
Yes, this is the sad story of what is it? The accidentally famous one. Jennifer's Body. This is Jennifer's Body, right? That it was originally intended to be a feminist film, and then they took all of that part out to cater to an audience in the male gaze, when that's not the point. Yeah. And they did the same thing here. And then they also regurgitate tired horror tropes, like their portrayal and use of Black characters.
Yeah. It was totally just, how are you doing? Are you okay? What's happening? I am here with no other character development or existence but to be here for you.
Yeah.
That's entirely what it was. He was a cop, but we didn't hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
He had a job and a life and a daughter. That didn't matter at all compared to the nice blonde lady. Yeah. Nothing against Elizabeth Moss, but yeah. It's tired. It's tired. Stop.
He even has that line.
Stop.
Where he says, like, I let you down. Like, I shouldn't have left you, right? Like, no, you 100% should have left her.
She technically in this realm hit your daughter. Yeah. Yes, you should have left.
Yes,
you have no duty to this.
Yeah, you do not owe her anything. She's having a psychotic break, and maybe you should have, like, called for help, like called her sister, or called for her to get some psychiatric help, right? But, and you're a cop. Unfortunately, they usually handle those things pretty badly anyway. But you could have called your friends and been like, I have a friend who's having a break right now. but you don't owe her. You do not. There's nothing that you owe this woman. There's nothing.
And there was literally no backstory to explain
why
they're friends, what happened, why he feels like he needs to help her.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You get one line that he says, "I'm a cop," in a joke. Because they're like attacking him like fun. And so that is to be like, oh, look at this big, strong black man. And this is just like they talk about in horror noir and in a time again trope, is that they build up this black man who's tough and powerful so that they can break him down by the big evil villain so we can be convinced that he is very bad. And that's exactly, like, it's so
exactly
cheap.
what it was.
And it's cheap. Like, if he was not in his invisibility cloak, he wouldn't have been able to get any hits on that man. Yeah. And it's rude that, like, our first abuse is, like, besides to Elizabeth Moss, is to this young black woman. Right? This black girl gets hit, and he reacts very honestly to that. Yeah. Like, you know, I think...
He acted correctly. Like, that 100%.
He owes her nothing, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's one of the many things that really kind of falls for it. So I think it's kind of...
Just made it like a...
I said like a C+, but it's even less than that now.
Yeah.
Like, because to me, I think, like, if you haven't really lived it, can you really tell the story honestly? And if you're not being, like, I feel like he was trying to be aware of the fact that he didn't have the right to it and put in some effort. But I think I think it's a part of, like, the production house having more control than the creative.
Yeah. If anything, I feel like this is a good opportunity. So people who have these privileges, power, take a second, realize you maybe shouldn't be the one making the thing, but instead, if you know somebody who can tell that story, you use your privilege and platform to have them do it.
Yeah.
You partner.
Yeah.
You just have there's people with two directors, right?
Sure.
Is that a thing?
I don't know. Or you can write and direct, like, you can be a team.
Help.
You can be
but, like, you
director,
don't, it's not...
executive.
Just because it needs to be told does not mean it is your job
to tell it.
To tell it as the person who does not have that in your toolbox of things you know about.
And if you don't have friends who do that, then maybe you need to get different friends. Not different, but more friends. Like, expand your circle, your social circle. Get to know people of different backgrounds and lifestyles and learn from them, and also, like, help them and lift each other up. Like, we need to be doing that.
Also, if you're going to use their stories, they need to be listed.
Yeah.
Like, they need the credit. You can't just say, oh, look at me.
I talk to people, believe me.
I talk to them. They get no credit in this film.
Yeah.
But I mentioned that I talked to them, so it's fine.
Yeah. I talked to Elizabeth Moss, and so I did it. It's all done. Talked to Elizabeth Moss.
She's the one...
From Hollywood.
One lady.
One lady. She knows. She's been in Handmaid's Tale. She knows what she's talking about. Yeah.
All I'm saying is, just because, yes, you have the power to do so, use that power to put the right person in the seat.
In the place, to
do it. Like, it's not all of our individual jobs to tell stories that aren't ours. I think we shouldn't be telling them.
I did want to plug one thing from the Smithsonian Magazine.
Go for it.
That the technology does exist for this film, which I thought was really cool. And it says, Canada-based hyper-stealth biotechnology has created a thin sheet of material capable of bending light to create the same kind of invisibility effect. The material, called quantum stealth, works with all wavelengths of visible light, and it works by bending light coming from the background on both sides toward the viewer to bend a blind spot in the middle.
So it's just mirrors.
Yeah. So it's like how he had all those cameras and it was very trypophobic warning. Yeah, because that's what it would take, is like you're not becoming invisible, you're just manipulating what people are seeing.
Are able to see.
Yeah, so you're becoming a blind spot. And I feel like we already rated it in this whole film and this whole episode, and the rating was bad.
Yeah, it was like the first 25 and maybe a little bit more. Okay. Yeah. Like good film, good filming specifically, like cinematography and like acting, like story.
Yeah.
Cool. Then hard.
Why?
Hard why?
What are you doing? Ugh. Yeah, that's how I feel. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's not a mini-sode, it's just a sode.
Yeah, and, we have lots to say all the time. We don't know how to stop.
Yeah. But this is about the time, yeah. So I'd say, watch it. because I think everyone should experience it. I think
It
people
was,
should
like-
see, because there's good parts of it.
Yeah.
Just, like, understand this is not the best way to have done that. And it was disappointing. I was so disappointed. Ugh, that's sad. Give ladies a chance. Yeah, so don't get married.
They'll eat your kids.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.